Welcome to J&M Bedtime Stories. Tonight we discuss 8 cases of true crime that happened during the Christmas season. Our thoughts and hearts go out to the victims and the victims' families that were affected by these horrible events. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, a 45-year-old aerospace engineer, seemed like an ordinary man, but beneath the surface, he was a ticking time bomb. After a bitter divorce from his wife Sylvia earlier that year, Bruce was left financially drained and emotionally shattered. His resentment festered, turning into a plan for revenge. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, Bruce devised a chilling plan. He purchased a custom Santa Claus suit and armed himself with 4 semi-automatic handguns. But the most horrifying part, a homemade flamethrower concealed in a gift-wrapped box. On Christmas Eve around 11:30 p.m., Pardo arrived at Sylvia's family home where a festive party was underway. He knocked on the door, dressed as Santa, carrying his deadly package. As the door opened, Bruce unleashed a storm of gunfire, shooting partygoers indiscriminately. Afterward, he set the house ablaze with his flamethrower. The fire consumed the home, leaving destruction and heartbreak in its wake. 9 people, including Sylvia and her parents, were killed that night. Others were left injured and traumatized. The fire, fueled by accelerants, engulfed the house completely, leaving little evidence behind. After the massacre, Bruce fled to his brother's house in Selmer, California. Badly burned during the attack, his escape plan unraveled. The next morning, police found Pardo dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His Santa suit, burned into his flesh, was a grim reminder of his heinous act. Investigators concluded that Bruce Pardo's rage stemmed from his divorce. Financial strain and deep-seated anger drove him to commit one of the most horrifying holiday-related crimes in U.S. history. The Cina Massacre is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of unresolved anger, domestic violence, and mental health struggles. It's a story of pain, loss, and the dark side of the human spirit. Christmas Day is supposed to be a time for joy and togetherness, but in 1929, in Germantown, North Carolina, the holiday became a day of unspeakable horror for the Lawson family. The Lawson family seemed like an ordinary farming family in rural North Carolina. Charlie Lawson, a 43-year-old tobacco farmer, lived with his wife Fanny and their 7 children. They were known around town as hardworking and unassuming. But in December 1929, Charlie began to act strangely. He took his family into town to buy new clothes, a rare extravagance for a struggling farming family, and had them pose for a professional photograph. No one could have known these seemingly kind gestures foreshadowed something sinister. On Christmas morning, the Lawson family woke up to what seemed like an ordinary holiday. But as the day unfolded, Charlie Lawson's dark intentions became horrifyingly clear. First, Charlie ambushed his daughters, 12-year-old Carrie and 7-year-old Maybelle, as they walked towards a neighbor's house. Armed with a shotgun, he killed them both, then bludgeoned their bodies to ensure they were dead. He carried their lifeless forms to the tobacco barn and left them there. Charlie returned to the house, where he shot his wife Fanny as she stood on the porch. Inside the home, chaos erupted. His older children, 16-year-old Marie, and the younger boys, James and Raymond, tried to hide, but Charlie hunted them down one by one, killing each. Finally, he turned his attention to the youngest, 4-month-old Mary Lou. In an act of unimaginable cruelty, he bludgeoned her to death. After murdering his family, Charlie walked into the woods behind his house. Hours later, neighbors who had come to check on the family discovered the gruesome scene. They heard a gunshot echo from the woods and found Charlie dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Next to his body were footprints circling a tree, as if he had paced for hours before taking his own life. To this day, the motive for Charlie Lawson's actions remains unclear. Some speculate he suffered from undiagnosed mental illness or severe financial stress. Others point to darker rumors, including allegations of an incestuous relationship between Charlie and his eldest daughter, Marie. Though unproven, these allegations have fueled speculation that a family secret may have driven Charlie to commit the murders. The tragedy shook the small town of Germantown and the nation. The family's home became a macabre tourist attraction, with visitors eager to see the scene of the murders. Even today, the story of the Lawson family murders lingers in local lore, a grim reminder of how darkness can hide behind even the most innocent facades. John Benet Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia. The daughter of John and Patsy Ramsey, she grew up in Boulder, Colorado, with her older brother, Burke. A bright and beautiful child, John Benet was a star in the local beauty pageant scene, winning titles and trophies that made her a familiar face in her community. Her family was wealthy and well-connected, living what seemed like the perfect life. But behind the glittering crowns and lavish lifestyle, tragedy was waiting. On December 26, 1996, Patsy Ramsey woke early to find a chilling ransom note on the staircase. It demanded $118,000, an oddly specific amount, claiming John Benet had been kidnapped. The note warned the family not to contact the police, but Patsy immediately dialed 911. Police arrived at the Ramsey home, unaware that the horror was just beginning. Hours later, John Benet's father, John Ramsey, made a devastating discovery. He found John Benet's lifeless body in the basement of their home. She had been strangled with a garrote made from a cord and a paintbrush handle, and her skull was fractured from blunt force trauma. Evidence suggested she may have been assaulted, but the findings were inconclusive. The ransom note was bizarre and unprecedented. It was lengthy, 3 pages long, and written on stationery from the Ramsey home. The demand for $118,000 raised eyebrows, as it matched John Ramsey's recent work bonus. Handwriting analysis was inconclusive, but many found it suspicious that the note seemed overly detailed and theatrical, as if staged. The investigation into John Benet's death was plagued by mistakes. Police allowed friends and family to enter the home, contaminating the crime scene. Shockingly, John Benet's body wasn't discovered until John Ramsey conducted his own search hours after law enforcement arrived. The case quickly became a media frenzy, with sensational headlines and rampant speculation about who was responsible. Over the years, theories about John Benet's murder have divided experts and the public alike. One theory points to an intruder. DNA evidence found on John Benet's clothing didn't match any family members, and an unidentified boot print was found near the basement window. Another theory suggests family involvement. Critics have questioned the parents' behavior, the unusual ransom note, and alleged inconsistencies in their statements. Some even speculate John Benet's older brother, Burke, might have accidentally caused her death leading the family to cover it up. However, in 2008, DNA testing officially cleared the Ramsey family, shifting focus back to the intruder theory. DNA evidence remains one of the most compelling aspects of this case. While it cleared the Ramseys, it has yet to lead to a match in any law enforcement database. The identity of the person responsible for John Benet's death remains a mystery, leaving investigators and the public frustrated. The John Benet Ramsey case has captivated and haunted the world for nearly 3 decades. It's a story of life cut tragically short, a flawed investigation, and unanswered questions. Today, John Benet's murder remains unsolved, but her memory endures as a symbol of innocence lost. Edward and Wilhelmina Moren, better known as Ed and Minnie, were well-respected members of their community. Ed, 81, and Minnie, 83, were retired and lived a quiet, peaceful life in their farmhouse in Ethel, Washington. Known for their kindness and generosity, the Morens had no known enemies, but in December 1985, their lives were cut short in an act of shocking brutality. On December 19, 1985, Ed and Minnie were seen leaving their home in their green Chrysler Newport. Witnesses reported that the couple appeared uneasy, as though they were being forced to leave. When they failed to show up for a planned family Christmas party, their relatives became worried. A search began, but no one could have anticipated the grim discovery that awaited. On Christmas Eve, 5 days after they went missing, the Morens' bodies were found in a wooded area. Both had been shot in the back multiple times with a shotgun. Their car was later discovered abandoned in a nearby parking lot, its interior covered in blood. Investigators believed that the couple had been forced to withdraw a large sum of money from their bank before being murdered. For decades, the Moren murders remained unsolved. Investigators struggled to find leads in a case that shocked the quiet Lewis County community. Rumors circulated about the involvement of local criminals, but with no concrete evidence, the case grew cold. The grieving family held on to hope, but justice seemed out of reach. Finally, in 2012, a breakthrough came. New witnesses and advances in forensic technology brought renewed attention to the case. 2 suspects emerged, Rick Riff and his brother John Riff. The brothers were known to local law enforcement and had a history of violent behavior. Witnesses claimed they had seen the Riff brothers with the Morens on the day of the murders. By the time charges were filed, John Riff had died. Rick Riff, however, was arrested and brought to trial. In 2013, Rick Riff stood trial for the murders of Ed and Minnie Moren. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, arguing that the brothers had kidnapped the Morens, forced them to withdraw $8,500 from their bank, and then executed them in cold blood. Witnesses testified about incriminating statements Rick had made, and forensic evidence tied him to the scene. The jury deliberated and found Rick Riff guilty of murder, kidnapping, and robbery. He was sentenced to life in prison. Though justice was finally served, the Moren murders remain a chilling reminder of how senseless violence can shatter even the most peaceful lives. For the community of Lewis County, the case brought closure, but also a lasting scar. Ed and Minnie's story continues to resonate, a cautionary tale about trust, vulnerability, and resilience. The Hudson Family, Frank and Phoebe Hudson. lived on a quiet farm just outside Emporia, Kansas. Frank was a hard-working man, and Phoebe, his wife, was known for her kindness and dedication to her family. On Christmas Eve, 1881, they hosted Phoebe's sister, Susan Hazen, and her 2 young children for holiday festivities. What should have been a joyful evening took a horrifying turn. Sometime during the night, an unknown assailant entered the Hudson home, armed with an axe. The intruder carried out an unthinkable act of violence. By morning, the bodies of Frank, Phoebe, Susanna, and her children were discovered inside the home. Each victim had been brutally attacked, their lives cut short in an instant. The scene was gruesome, and the town was left reeling. The murders shocked the small community of Emporia. Investigators were desperate for answers, but the case presented more questions than clues. There were no witnesses, and the killer left behind no clear motive. The Hudson family seemed to have no enemies, and robbery didn't appear to be the motive. Valuables were left untouched. Despite the lack of evidence, suspicion began to spread. Some speculated that a drifter or transient laborer passing through the area might have committed the crime. Others wondered if the killer was someone closer to the family, perhaps harboring a hidden grudge. Unfortunately, the 1880s lacked the forensic tools we rely on today. With no fingerprints, DNA, or modern investigative methods, the case grew cold. The Christmas Eve axe murders left a lasting scar on the town of Emporia. The case remains unsolved to this day, a chilling reminder of how one act of violence can ripple through a community for generations. The Hudson family's story is a tragic chapter in the dark history of true crime, but it also serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of peace, even during the most joyful times of the year. Our next story takes us back to New London, Texas in the 1950s, a close-knit town where everyone knew each other and the holidays were celebrated with warmth and cheer. One family in particular, the Thompsons, was well loved in their community. They were known for hosting one of the most beautifully decorated Christmas trees every year, a tradition that brought friends and neighbors together. On Christmas Eve, the Thompsons hosted their annual holiday gathering. Friends and family gathered around the tree, exchanging gifts and enjoying the festive atmosphere. But what began as a joyful celebration would take a deadly turn. Late into the evening, while the family was still gathered, tragedy struck. A small spark, likely from faulty electrical wiring on the Christmas tree lights, ignited the dry pine needles. Within moments, the tree was engulfed in flames. The fire spread rapidly, fueled by the tree and the surrounding decorations. The old wooden structure of the Thompson home caught fire almost instantly, trapping several family members and guests inside. Neighbors rushed to help, and the fire department arrived quickly, but it was too late. The blaze claimed the lives of 6 people, including 2 children, and left the community in shock. In the days that followed, the town of New London came together to support the grieving Thompson family and the other victims' loved ones. The tragedy led to a renewed focus on fire safety, particularly during the holiday season. Families were reminded of the dangers of dry Christmas trees, faulty wiring, and the importance of fire prevention. The Christmas tree tragedy was a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly joy can turn to sorrow. It also served as a wake-up call for communities across the nation to prioritize safety during the holidays. Today, fire-resistant artificial trees and LED lights have become popular alternatives to reduce the risk of fires. But the story of the Thompson family remains a powerful, cautionary tale. As we remember the lives lost in the Christmas tree tragedy, let us also honor their memory by taking every precaution to keep our families safe. Check your lights, water your tree, and never leave decorations unattended. The best gift we can give our loved ones is the gift of safety. Small towns often seem like safe havens, where life moves slowly and everyone knows each other. But behind the tranquility of Carnation, Washington, a brutal crime shattered that sense of security. On Christmas Eve 2007, the peaceful community was rocked by a horrifying double murder. This is the story of the Carnation murders. Carnation, Washington is a picturesque town about 30 miles east of Seattle. Known for its tight-knit community and scenic beauty, it seemed like the last place where a gruesome crime could happen. But on December 24th, 2007, that peaceful image was shattered when the bodies of two victims were discovered in a farmhouse on a remote property near Carnation. Michelle and Scott White were the victims. In their early 30s, the couple had been married for several years and had a young son. They had moved to Carnation from another part of Washington to start a new chapter in their lives. By all accounts, they were well-liked, hard-working people. Nothing about them suggested they would be the victims of such a violent crime, but their story would soon take a tragic turn. On Christmas Eve, a family member arrived at the couple's farmhouse and was horrified to find the bodies of Michelle and Scott White. Both had been brutally murdered. Scott was found in the home, while Michelle was found in a separate area on the property. The scene was gruesome. They had been shot multiple times, and there were signs of a violent struggle. Local authorities quickly responded to the scene, launching a full investigation. Detectives were left with few immediate clues, no obvious signs of forced entry, and nothing in the home appeared to be missing. What puzzled investigators the most was the fact that the couple's young child had been left unharmed in the home. There was no apparent motive, and no one had been seen leaving the property. Days after the bodies were found, investigators received a breakthrough in the case. The police turned their attention to a man named Robert J. Bob Barrett, who had been a friend of Scott White. Barrett, a man in his late 40s, was known to have a complicated history with Scott. Though their friendship appeared to be solid on the surface, tensions had been growing between the two men. Barrett was also a known felon with a history of violent behavior and substance abuse. As investigators dug deeper into Barrett's background, they uncovered troubling details. They discovered that Barrett had been involved in several shady business dealings with Scott White, some of which had turned sour. There were rumors of disputes over money and a potential theft, but nothing concrete yet. Despite the relationship between Barrett and Scott deteriorating, investigators had no definitive evidence that linked him to the murders, until they uncovered a key piece of information. Barrett had been in the area around the time of the murders, and security camera footage from a nearby store placed him close to the White farmhouse on Christmas Eve. On January 3, 2008, Bob Barrett was arrested and charged with the murders of Michelle and Scott White. During his trial, prosecutors presented evidence that Barrett had planned the killings after a violent confrontation with Scott over a financial dispute. Barrett's defense argued that he had no motive and that there was no direct evidence to tie him to the murders, but the prosecution painted a clear picture of a man who was desperate and willing to kill to cover up his wrongdoings. After a lengthy trial, the jury convicted Barrett of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The murders of Michelle and Scott White devastated the community of Carnation. Their families were left heartbroken, and the small town was forever changed. Though justice was served with Barrett's conviction, the pain of the crime lingered. The story of the Carnation murders serves as a chilling reminder of how even the most tranquil places can harbor dark secrets. Monticello, a small town in northern Indiana, is a peaceful community known for its friendly neighbors and picturesque charm. Christmas time in this close-knit town was usually a season of family gatherings, holiday dinners, and festive cheer. But on December 24th, 1977, everything changed in an instant. A devastating fire broke out in a family home, and the resulting tragedy would haunt the community for years to come. The victims of the Monticello Christmas fire were the Williams family. John Williams, a local farmer, and his wife Marie were well-loved members of the community. They had 5 children ranging in age from 3 to 16 and had been planning a quiet holiday evening together. On Christmas Eve, the family gathered around their Christmas tree, enjoying the holiday festivities. They were unaware that disaster was about to strike. The fire began sometime around 9 p.m. It's believed that the blaze started in the living room, possibly due to faulty wiring in the Christmas tree lights. The dry pine, laden with decorations, acted as a perfect fuel source for the flames. Within moments, the fire spread quickly through the house, engulfing it in a raging inferno. John Williams, who was home with his wife and children, desperately tried to get everyone out of the house. He managed to save 2 of the children, but the fire was so intense it quickly cut off their escape routes. By the time firefighters arrived at the scene, the house was nearly completely destroyed. The fire had spread so quickly and the heat was so intense that the structure began to collapse. Firefighters managed to rescue John and 2 of the children, but tragically, they could not save the rest of the family. Marie Williams and 3 of the children perished in the flames. The aftermath of the Monticello Christmas fire left the community in shock. John Williams, who survived the fire, was heartbroken by the loss of his wife and 3 children. Local residents rallied around the grieving father and survivors, offering support in any way they could. The town of Monticello was forever changed by this tragic event, and the Williams family's story became a somber reminder of how quickly disaster can strike. Investigators quickly arrived at the scene to determine the cause of the fire. They found that the fire had likely started from the Christmas tree lights, but there was no clear indication of foul play. The combination of the dry tree and faulty wiring made the fire spread so quickly that it left few options for escape. While no criminal charges were filed, the fire brought a significant awareness to the dangers of holiday decorations and faulty electrical equipment. While the fire remains one of the most devastating tragedies in Monticello's history, it also sparked important changes in fire safety regulations. Local authorities, alongside national organizations, worked to educate the public on fire safety, especially during the holiday season. Faulty Christmas tree lights, dry trees, and overloaded electrical circuits became key points of focus in safety campaigns. The Williams family's tragedy served as a painful reminder of the importance of fire protection. As the years passed, the town of Monticello continued to honor the memory of the Williams family. Memorials were held, and the community came together to support those left behind. John Williams eventually found healing, but the scars of that Christmas Eve tragedy would never truly fade. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a comment below and like the video. Consider subscribing if you are not currently a subscriber, and hit that bell to turn on notifications so you'll know every time we upload a new video. Until next time, stay curious.